This training program for telehandlers has been developed by the Elevating Work Platform Association of Australia, together with major industry partners. It does not attempt to replicate or substitute for any existing programs, but aims to create a safety awareness culture for EWPA members who are using or intending to use telehandlers. The program features short video-based tutorials followed by questions that will test your comprehension of each topic. This information is provided to offer guidance and duty of care training on the safety aspects of operating telehandlers with standard forklift attachments. It is not to be taken as a statement of law and must not be construed to waive or modify any legal obligation. A telescopic handler or telehandler can be described as a rough terrain variable reach forklift. Equipped with a telescoping boom, the telehandler is able to pick and place loads at distances in front of the machine as well as at various lift heights. The ability to reach out in front of the telehandler allows the operator some flexibility in the placement of a load. Manufacturer-approved attachments such as crane jibs and EWP baskets can also be fitted. There are several types of telehandlers in use, and these can be divided into the following groups: slewing and non-slewing, those that use outriggers, and those that use frame levelling. To operate a telehandler, you may require specific safety equipment that is prescribed for the conditions you are working in. Typical safety equipment may include a hard hat, safety vest, safety glasses, and steel-capped safety boots. All telehandlers will have specific decals that convey key safety information you need to know. Make sure you understand these decals before you enter and operate the telehandler. There must be a logbook on the telehandler that you must fill in before operation. Ensure the logbook is up to date and stored in the cabin for immediate access. Although the forklift attachment is the most common, there are other manufacturer-approved attachments available for use. Approved attachments will have clearly identifiable rating charts and other signs. Unapproved attachments must not be used under any circumstances and may pose a serious safety hazard, such as forks that have been repaired by welding. To work out what you can lift to what height and at what boom length, each telehandler is equipped with a series of capacity charts. We will review these charts in a later section in detail. There are passing similarities between a telehandler and a car. The main one being that most telehandlers and cars have 4 wheels, pneumatic tyres, and a similar steering wheel and brake arrangement. The big differences are the ones that can lead to serious injury if not appreciated or understood. The telehandler carries the operator and materials only with no passengers. The centre of gravity can shift dramatically on the telehandler with or without a load. Braking is also affected by changes in load weight. The telehandler is designed for low-speed driving and has multiple steering setups suitable for rough terrain. Before you operate the telehandler, learn as much as possible about the worksite and carry out a risk assessment. Walk around and inspect the surfaces over which you will be expected to travel. You should discuss site hazards and controls with the site manager before commencing work. Most importantly, you must weigh up the ability of the telehandler to perform the tasks required on the conditions of the surface and around any other obstacles or persons. Here are some of the common site hazards you may encounter: holes, excavations, drop-offs and culverts. Deep mud, soft soil and obstacles. Slippery surfaces, oil spills and water. Unless you are certain that the depth of water does not exceed a safe operating level, Do not attempt to drive through a body of water. Be careful whenever driving through wooded areas. Consider the extension of the load, the forks, boom, and other parts of the telehandler when driving in a wooded area. Of all the hazards that you will encounter, one of the most lethal is power lines, which can be overhead, concealed within the structure of buildings, or below ground. Always check for power lines before you commence your task. Do not approach power lines, overhead or underground cables or other power sources with any part of your telehandler or load. The recommended distances are 6.4 metres from distribution lines and 10 metres from transmission lines. Check each state's regulations for details. In addition to power lines, there may be exposed or hidden gas and water services that can cause damage or injuries through contact. Make sure you know the location of all services before you start work. Telehandlers are powered by combustion engines that emit fumes that can be dangerous to others and yourself if in a confined space. The operator must be competent to use the telehandler and any attachments that may be required. Before you start to operate the telehandler, you must walk around the machine and check the condition of the telehandler. Some of the specific checks include that the windows are all clean and mirrors properly adjusted. The fork or other attachments are rating stamped by the manufacturer and are securely attached. The engine and radiator is free of debris or flammable materials. Oils, fuel and hydraulic levels are good and all caps secured. Tyres are in good condition and correctly inflated. All lights, horns and alarms are correctly working. The next step is to check the rollover protection structure known as ROPS and the falling objects protection structure known as FOPS, which must be in good condition and free of damage. This protective structure is your main defense in an emergency situation and must be free of cracks or surface damage. Enter the cabin and continue your checking. Sit in the operator's seat. Adjust for comfortable operation. Fasten the safety belt securely around you. Position all controls in neutral. Be sure the handbrake is on. Make sure all switches and lights are working. Sound the horn to warn others in the area before you start the telehandler. Operating the telehandler requires you to learn and understand the controls inside the cabin. These will vary from machine to machine, and you should seek advice from a competent person before attempting to use the telehandler if you are unsure of any control functions. The next step is to check functionality and start the telehandler. Always ensure no one is under or immediately around the telehandler before you commence moving. Start the telehandler according to either normal starting or cold starting procedures as explained in the operator manual. In the event that a malfunction or abnormal condition is identified on the telehandler, you should park the machine on a level, safe area and then shut down and secure. Now that you're familiar with where the main controls are, you need to test them before you commence your tasks. These tests include telescopic boom extension, extend and retract, telescopic boom elevation, raise and lower, frame leveling, wheel brakes, parking brake, steering, all modes left and right, horn or backup alarm, fork or carriage tilt, transfer carriage if equipped, outriggers if equipped, check the load moment indicator or LMI. Unlike a car, the telehandler has 3 unique steering systems that are employed for a variety of site conditions and uses. The options are front wheel steering, most similar to a car, all-wheel steering, giving tight circling ability in confined spaces, crab steering for moving on an angle in tight spots, To change between modes, there is a lever or switch that may require you to be stationary at the change. It is vital that visual awareness be given a high priority whenever operating a telehandler. Not only must you have the best possible visibility from the machine, but it is also equally important that others see you. Line of sight is one of the most important concerns when driving a telehandler. Impaired visibility is one of the leading causes of accidents. Typical line of sight obstructions include boom position in relation to the cabin, direction of travel, a load that exceeds the viewing height of the operator, buildings that obscure views of intersections, stacked cartons. Remember, other sight noises may prevent you from hearing any horn or warning device. In a confined area, such as a narrow aisle or between narrowly spaced buildings, remember to ensure that the load does not exceed the width of the space available. Watch for low doorways. Watch for pedestrians. Ensure that there is adequate lighting and ventilation. Exercise caution whenever entering or leaving a building, especially on bright sunny days. Allow time for your eyes to adjust. Always use your horn, slow down, and be prepared to stop. Speed should be determined by conditions. It is recommended that once a load has been placed on the forks, you should restrict machine speed to a maximum speed of 4 km per hour, which is walking speed. The ability to turn the telehandler safely entails many considerations. Among these are tall loads, which may be unstable in turns. Transporting wide loads may lead to problems when a turn is attempted in narrow passageways such as storage racks, between sheds or warehouses, or when travelling in heavily wooded or brushy areas. Be aware of the steering type or mode on the particular machine you are operating. To maintain vehicle stability, the fork assembly and its load should be lowered and retracted to a position as near to the machine and ground as possible. Driving a telehandler with the forks raised or extended can cause the machine to become unstable. It also increases the possibility of contacting power lines. Driving on slopes can be dangerous. There is a much greater risk of tip over or load loss. Follow these rules for maximum safety. Avoid excessively steep slopes or unstable surfaces. If you must drive on a slope, keep the load low and proceed with extreme caution. Avoid turning on a slope. Use a low gear and/or four-wheel drive. This allows compression braking by the engine, helping you to control the speed of the telehandler. Never engage inching or shift to neutral when going downhill. Ascend and descend slopes with the heavy end of the telehandler pointing up the incline. Always refer to the manufacturer's load capacity chart to determine if the telehandler is capable of traversing the slope safely. If no specific information is available, keep the heavy end facing uphill, and this will be determined by the weight of the load. In the event the telehandler rolls, you must remain in your seat, hold on firmly, and lean away from the point of impact. It is best to be familiar with some of the basic concepts of telehandlers to understand what makes them stable and what to do to avoid a potential accident. The base upon which the telehandler stands is the two front tyres and a pivot point at the rear axle. The rear wheels are not part of the base because most telehandlers have an oscillating rear axle for travelling over uneven ground. The 3 points comprised of the two front tyres and the rear pivot form a triangle at ground level, commonly known as the stability triangle. As long as the telehandler's centre of gravity, the point around which the machine's weight is equally distributed, remains within this stability triangle, the machine remains stable. The stability triangle is, in fact, three-dimensional, because as a load is lifted vertically, the triangle area of safe operation decreases in size, as shown here, reducing stability. Adding a load to the forks while the boom is down causes the centre of gravity to move forward and down, but raising a load will cause the centre of gravity to move up and to the rear. Should the centre of gravity move outside the stability triangle, the telehandler will become unstable and will tip over. If the centre of gravity moves beyond the front of the triangle, such as attempting to lift a load in excess of the machine's rating, a forward tip will occur. If the centre of gravity moves outside the triangle to the left or right, such as raising the boom on a hillside, a lateral tip will occur. The further the centre of gravity moves towards the rear, the less range it has to move laterally and still remain inside the stability triangle. You should be aware that the machine, with the boom fully raised and fully retracted, and with no load, places the machine's centre of gravity at its furthest rearward point. Before lifting a load, check that it can extend to a distance required to place the load safely at its destination. For example, a telehandler rated at 3 tonne at 600mm centres is based on the unit being on firm level ground and the boom fully retracted. If the materials you need to lift have no weight identified, you must consult with the supplier or a competent person who can provide the correct weight before attempting to lift it. After assessing the load and determining it is safely secured to move, position the load on the telehandler forks so that the load is horizontally centered across the forks. Keep the load or the forks as low as practical. Cradle the load by tilting the forks back. Once you have arrived at the lifting position, the lifting and placing of the load can commence. Some telehandlers are equipped with frame leveling or stabilizers. Use these in conjunction with sensors and indicators to bring the telehandler into a level position. Make sure that the landing point can safely support the weight of the load. The landing point is level, front to back and side to side. You should lift the load by raising and extending the boom up to the landing position. On many sites, there may be services or power lines above you. Always check and ensure you are well clear of these hazards. Remember, while you are lifting a load, never engage a load or lift a load more than 1 metre above the ground unless the telehandler is level. Once the telehandler frame is level and the telehandler has raised a load more than 1 metre above the ground, it must not be moved from this position. Do not use outriggers to level the telehandler with the load more than 1 metre above the ground. After you have lifted and placed the load, retract the boom and return it to the carry position, and retract any stabilizers or adjust frame leveling before moving the telehandler. Safely shut down the telehandler as per the operator instructions. Park the telehandler in a safe location and remove the ignition key. Walk around the telehandler and inspect for any damage which must be entered in the logbook and reported if in need of attention. To determine if an attachment is approved for use on the specific telehandler you are using, the attachment model or option number on the attachment identification plate must match the attachment number on a capacity chart located in the operator cab. The model on the capacity chart must match the model telehandler being used. The load centre of the fork must match the load centre as indicated on the capacity chart. Hydraulically powered attachments must only be used on machines equipped with auxiliary hydraulics. If any of the above conditions are not met, do not use the attachment. Once you have verified that the fork or attachment you are using is correctly matched to the telehandler, you will then need to assess its ability to lift and place the load. When the load rating of the telehandler differs from the capacity of the forks or attachment, the lower value becomes the overall load capacity. Use the capacity chart to determine maximum capacity at various machine configurations. Lifting and placing a load may require use of more than one capacity chart based on machine configuration. Without load charts, there would be no way of knowing just how high and how far we could lift a load. Manufacturers supply load charts to give the operator certainty in what can or cannot be lifted and to what boom extension. As the centre of gravity is determined by the vertical and horizontal position of the load, the machine could tip without warning once you have moved the centre of gravity outside of the stability triangle. Therefore, to use a load chart for your lift, you must have the telehandler on level ground and have the tyres inflated to correct pressure. Other factors can be wind speed, ice or poor soil conditions, which combined or on their own could cause an accident to occur. Load charts are designed to allow the operator to lift and place a load by following a chart that has a horizontal or X-axis and a vertical or Y-axis. The load centre is always located 600 mm from the backstop of the fork tines, and you should centre the load horizontally on the forks as well. These examples are for pallet or symmetrical loads, and pipes or long loads will require a different calculation. Telehandlers with stabilisers will often have a higher lifting and extension capacity and a bigger stability triangle in the forward direction. Where the horizontal distance and the vertical height combine to match your boom extension and lift height, an angle is shown on the boom arm. As the boom is extended, numbers or letters will indicate the amount of extension. For instance, the chart shows if we simply extend the boom horizontally in front of the telehandler, the weight that can be supported reduces dramatically. In this example, the weight that can be supported at a 2-metre horizontal extension is 4,000 kilograms, but at 9 metres it reduces to only 1,250 kilograms. The chart shows that if we extend a 4,000 kilogram load straight up with no extension of the boom, we can lift it to 6.27 metres. If we extend the boom out forward, the lifting capacity drops immediately by 25% to 3,000 kilograms. The further the extension forward at height, the more the reduction of lifting capacity, as shown here. To properly use the capacity chart, the operator must first determine and/or have the following: a manufacturer-approved attachment, the proper capacity chart, weight of the load being lifted, load placement information, height where the load is to be placed, distance from the front tyres of the telehandler where the load is to be placed. On the capacity chart, find the line for the height and follow it over to the distance. The number in the load zone where the two cross is the maximum capacity for this lift. If the two cross at a division between the zones, the smaller number must be used. The number in the load zone must be equal to or greater than the weight of the load to be lifted. Determine the limits of the load zone on the capacity chart and keep within these limits.